So today's video is going to be part 2 of Mistborn versus Stormlight Archive. So I've done part 1 thus far. I'll have it linked down below if you're interested. That one dives into the characters, and for each of the videos in this series, we're going to be focusing on a specific aspect of these books and then putting them head to head. And for today, we are doing the magic system. Sanderson is very much known for his magic systems, and so this is the one that I think is going to be one of the most fantasy specific. We don't have to worry about spoilers here, so whether you've read these books or not, you can still stick around to see which one the majority of people thought was better over the other, because I did ask over on my Instagram stories what your opinions were. You all voted, so we'll be going over your thoughts. We'll see how often I agree with those, and then we'll see which one ends up being the winner. The very first question here is a little bit more vague. It says, which series has a better magic system overall? In your opinion, which one is better? It was exactly 50-50. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked that it was that close. To be perfectly honest, currently, I think Mistborn has a much stronger magic system. The reason being, I think that the magic system in the Stormlight Archive, when you first are introduced to this world, there are aspects to it that are magical. For example, the Spren. And I would say that more so fits into the world building. Even though it's rooted in something magical and fantastical, I don't think it's necessarily what you think of when you think of a magic system, whereas Mistborn, it's all about the magic system. A big thing that a lot of people get upset at Mistborn for is they feel like it's a video game. They feel like you're getting a tutorial, and I kind of agree with that, except for I like it. You definitely have that scene where, you know, in video games, when you get the character that's all the way leveled up at the beginning and you're like, this is awesome, and then something happens and then now you start at the bottom with no abilities and you're like, dang it, I want to have all those abilities again. Mistborn does that. We have a character that you see pretty early on use the magic. You have no idea what's going on, and then later that character is kind of taking another character under their wing. They're teaching them all about the magic, and you get this tutorial mode. You just need somebody to say, press triangle to use this metal or something. But then you also get specifics to do with each of the metals involved in the Mistborn magic system, which is called allomancy. There's also other aspects that you dive into in the other books. So you kind of get this full view of the magic system as the story goes on, which I think is really brilliant. I like the way that the magic system expands hand in hand with the stories themselves in the different installments. And then we have Stormlight Archive, where there are, of course, books where the magic system is elaborated on a little bit more. But to me, I feel like when I think magic system, I think rules and limitations. I gotta say, I have to give it to Mistborn. Mistborn wins for me. Since it was a tie for all of you, I'm just gonna give both of them a half a point. The next question is, which magic system do you understand more? And 74% said Mistborn. Then, of course, that would mean 26% for Stormlight Archive. Yes, this goes right along with the last one, which is why I think it's interesting, and I would love for anybody who felt this way, who voted Way of Kings or Stormlight Archive for the first question, but then voted for Mistborn on this second one. I would love to know what you think makes the Stormlight Archive's magic system better, even though you understand it less. You don't have to fully understand something, of course, to think that it's better. I just think that the Mistborn magic system, it's not without its intricacies. It's not extremely simplistic. It is complicated. There are small aspects to it that you kind of have to think about, or it takes a second to remember. You got to flip to the back to see which metal does what, and like I said, it gets expanded on. So it's not overly simplistic, but I understand it so much more. And then Stormlight Archive, you asked me to explain. I could explain aspects of it, but for the most part, I feel like I'm just along for the ride. I'm there for the characters more so than anything, and those sander lanches, right? But yep, I mean, I'm with all of you. Much easier to understand what's going on in Mistborn. The next one says, which system do you find more interesting? This one we flipped here, so 64% Stormlight and then 36% Mistborn. I think I'm with all of you because I have a better understanding in Mistborn, and because he really hits hard how the magic system works, and you see so many times you will see certain words italicized and you're like, if I have to read one more time. It never really bothered me, but I know it upsets people to see those specific words that he uses for the magic system. But I think because I understand the magic system of Mistborn Era 1 pretty well, then it's not mysterious necessarily the same way that Stormlight Archive's magic system is mysterious. Stormlight Archive's magic system is so much about discovery. It's intriguing. It lends itself to wanting to learn more and therefore finding it more fascinating. So I'm with all of you here. I do want to add as well that I think another thing that makes it more interesting is that every new discovery about the magic system is going to then have consequences in their world. And that's kind of true for Mistborn, but I would say more so in Stormlight. It has huge world problem type of consequences. It just feels like every new discovery is almost eating away at the fabric of their society. It kind of strips everybody of what they thought, and then they have to kind of relearn what they thought to be true. This doesn't just tie into the way their society is built and the class system and things like that, but it also has to do with how one culture interacts with another culture and how they feel about religion. So I think that there's just more to dissect with the magic system in Stormlight Archive in that way, whereas Mistborn, once you know it, you're like, all right, I got it. This next question was pretty close. Stormlight Archive did end up winning. It says, would you rather have the powers from Mistborn or the powers from Stormlight Archive? Man, of course, there's different kinds of powers in both, but man, do I want to be a Mistborn. I would love to be a Mistborn. I think it would be so cool, but I also really want to be what's known as a Windrunner. I think that would be so cool. Both rely on something. So in Stormlight Archive, a lot of times there's Stormlight associated with their magic, and then in Mistborn, you have the ingesting of metals. So it's not like they just have these powers all the time and can use them whenever. They do rely on some kind of source. And I don't know what it is, but something about the vials in Mistborn and then just being a boss all of a sudden seems so cool to me. In Mistborn, you have the Mistborns, who are people that have the ability to use all of the powers associated with the metals, and then you have Mistings, which are people that can only pull from a single metal and gain a power. So obviously I'd want to be a Mistborn. And then in Stormlight, I would only want to be certain groups of people that have magic. So it's tough because if you're taking like the best of the best, a Mistborn just seems really cool. Whereas the lower levels in Mistborn versus some of the one powers that I don't think are as cool in Stormlight Archive, there's so many options. I would say that overall you have more powerful people in Stormlight, and then in Mistborn, the Mistborns are really powerful. But the people in Stormlight Archive, some of the powers, they're pretty intense. I don't know. I'm just going to go Mistborn. I would rather have the powers from Mistborn. The last question says, which system do you think will or has more heavily impacted the fantasy genre? So 61% said Stormlight Archive, and then with Mistborn, 39%. I definitely disagree. I think Mistborn has already had a huge impact. So my husband and I have this conversation quite a bit about when you see people discussing fantasy books and when you see them reviewing fantasy books, you often see them discussing the magic system. And I don't even feel like, I'm not trying to say this term didn't exist before Sanderson, but I think that when you would talk about something like Lord of the Rings back in the day, or some of the more older classic fantasy books, I just don't feel like we thought of it as a system. I think we thought of it more in a soft magic way. And I think Sanderson has had a huge impact on already something like Powder Mage or Black Prism. I feel like those kinds of fantasy books, I'm not trying to put words in the mouths of those authors. I'm not saying Brian McClellan and Brent Weeks are like, yeah, absolutely, I just wanted to be the next Sanderson or anything like that. But I think that there's maybe some influence there, or that's something that publishing houses are trying to find the next Sanderson. They're trying to look for that next cool magic system. Founderside, another one by Robert Jackson Bennett. I think those have a system that more so, in my opinion, leans toward the way the Mistborn magic system feels, whereas the magic system in the Stormlight Archive is so big, it's so epic. Like I said when I was talking about what makes it so interesting, is that it has so much effect on everything. And to me, that's so much more fitting of large, epic fantasy, and I still don't think we see all that many huge epics in fantasy. I think we see high fantasy, like you have with Mistborn, but these huge 1,000-page tomes, or these series that are 10 plus books long, or even 6 or 7, more than 4. I just don't really think that you have that many books like that you have that time. And therefore, I think that the magic system in Mistborn, it's a lot harder of a magic system. Like a lot of you thought, it's an easier one to understand. And I think the concept of rules and limitations is more pulled from Mistborn. But I would love to know why a lot of you feel differently. I would love to know why so many of you leaned toward Stormlight Archive on this one. So anyway, I would love to know all your thoughts about all of these, whether you agree or disagree, or maybe you're not quite sure, you just want to bring up something. And then of course I didn't ask other questions that you might like to bring up. So if you have any other points that you would like to make, please feel free to do so. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. If you're interested in more Stormlight Archive Mistborn content, I'll have my Sanderson playlist linked down below, as well as my Versus playlist, so you can keep up with these Versus videos. But thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.